award is a great honor. I feel very humbled, actually, to be recognized by an organization that has tried and successfully taken the case study method global for so long. It's also very rewarding in that this is actually my first published case study, and that it is the first published case study from Holt International Business School. So I think that bodes well for what we're trying to do in this space to create global case studies. I have long been interested in the role of business as a transformative force. That business, not just by what they do or what they make, but how they make and do those things, can actually help to transform lives. In an era where we're now looking at a rising gap between the rich and the poor, where we have a growing population, the demographics are showing that much of the growth in the future is going to be coming from developing markets, it just seemed that we needed to start looking at business much more holistically. At the time we wrote the case, my colleague and self, we were looking at working with boards of directors and senior managers, trying to actually see how you could integrate sustainability into the strategic role of business. And in this case, we came upon Unilever, which at the end of the day ticked all the boxes. In addition, I had also been aware of the fact that in looking at emerging markets, many corporations seem to not realize the promise. Again, this is where the growth is going to be, and yet something like 17% of revenues from multinationals come from these markets. Yet here was Unilever with something like 57% of their revenues coming from these markets. What was the difference? What did Unilever know that other companies didn't know? And that, of course, is when you start to look at their whole management system, which is really what I was very interested in, the idea of a holistic system where you're looking at purpose aligned with strategy and corporate culture, and then how do you measure? How do you measure strategy? How do you measure individual actions? And Unilever had somehow figured out how to create this holistic system that at the end of the day also delivered business results. And I think our third piece of this and why it was such an attractive company to analyze was the very bold, courageous leadership. This idea of really making sustainability a strategy at the time was a really bold leap. And yet, it's really where the future lies, because this is where the growth is going to be. We need to bring more people into the market, and what better way than training farmers, creating women entrepreneurs as part of the supply chain, creating brands that actually help consumers save energy, working with their research and development groups to understand how do we create new products that actually save energy, both for the consumer and for the company. So in the end, Unilever ticked off all the boxes. You have to be conscious of making sure that within the case there is enough conflict that would encourage people to take different roles. So in this case in particular, it was things like, here we have a CEO saying to investors that we are no longer going to provide specific guidance on earnings results. Really sending a message, we are not running this company quarter by quarter, but for the long run. Well, was that a good thing to do, a bad thing to do? The role play is getting the students to argue both sides. If you have a senior management team that is not quite sure sustainability is the way to go, this was back in 2009 or 10 when Paul Pullman suggested this. Well, again, if you're a manager, could you argue both sides? I mean, have students take one side that, right, this is the future, this is the way to go, versus the other student perhaps saying, is this too much, too fast, too bold? That creates a very healthy debate, and in the end, you find the class divided between the two. So it makes for a very robust discussion and enables students to really do, which is what a case study is meant to do, is to teach them skills. It's to teach them really that ability to make a decision based on information and really about their vision and about strategy in the future. When we started out writing Unilever, I guess in my own mind I did have a framework, and I think that having a framework in mind and working backwards is actually a good technique. It allows you to sift through all the information, of which clearly with a case like Unilever, there is a lot of information, but enables you to sift through it to really find out what would be appropriate to teach the lesson you want to teach at the end. So I think for faculty writing, know where you want to end up, know what you're going to teach, and then work backwards with the case. Because it'll allow you to focus, it'll make sure you put the information in there the student needs to actually make a decision. I think having illustrations helps. I think my final advice would be ruthless in your editing.
Unilever believes that business needs to play a big role in tackling the world's challenges, like climate change or growing inequality. And we believe that creating case studies that share our experiences, both the ups and the downs, of what we're trying to do to make our business more sustainable, will really help future business leaders to take the same path. I loved working with Joanne on this project. She was very interested in what the business challenge was, and I always think that that's the best place to start. So I found her very well informed and with a clear idea of the kind of the shape that the case needed to take. And then we worked together on looking at the examples and the specifics of the way this has worked at Unilever.